The restaurant smelled like garlic butter and old money. Cordelia remembered that detail later, the garlic butter, because it was the last ordinary thing she noticed before the world tilted sideways and stayed that way. She had worn the black dress, the one Bram always said made her look dangerous. She had gotten her hair done that morning. She had practiced the easy laugh, the light touch on the wine glass, the warm handshake she would give to whoever these colleagues of his were, because that was who she was. She was the woman who made things go smoothly. She had been making things go smoothly for Bram Whitfield for 6 years. 6 years. She walked toward him across that restaurant, and she saw his face change when he spotted her. Not into the face of a man who is delighted to see the woman he loves, but into the face of a man doing a very fast, very private calculation. And she knew. Before he said a single word, she knew. But she didn't run. She didn't cry. She straightened her posture by exactly 1 inch, and she walked right to him, and she smiled. And then Bram Whitfield, the man who had keys to her house, who had eaten her mother's cooking at Thanksgiving, who had whispered "I love you" into her ear in the dark for 6 consecutive years, opened his mouth and said 4 words that would cost him everything he had ever built. He said, "This is my friend." The woman standing beside him was watching Cordelia's face with the careful attention of someone who has heard that sentence before. And that woman, that specific woman, would become the most important person in Cordelia's life for the next 93 days. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Cordelia Vance was 51 years old, and she had done everything right. She had built a life in Charlotte, North Carolina, the kind of life that looks like it belongs in a magazine, a renovated craftsman house on a street with mature trees, a career as a senior compliance officer at a mid-sized financial firm, a closet full of clothes that said "I have arrived" without shouting it. She had met Bram Whitfield at a work conference in Atlanta. He had been charming in the specific way that attractive men in good suits are charming at conferences, full attention, direct eye contact, the kind of listening that makes you feel like you are the only person in the room. He was 54. He had been divorced for 3 years. He had 2 adult children he talked about with exactly the right combination of pride and appropriate guilt about the divorce. He checked every box Cordelia had. They did not rush. That was what she always told people when they asked about the relationship. We didn't rush. They dated for 8 months before he got a drawer at her place. Another 6 before they talked about the future. Another year before he began spending 4 nights a week at her house instead of his downtown apartment. He never proposed. That was a fact she had learned to carry the way you carry a small stone in your shoe, always aware of it, always adjusting, never quite addressing it. But they were serious. Everyone knew they were serious. Her friends knew. Her sister Phyllis knew. Her mother, before she passed, had known. Bram had given a toast at her niece's wedding. He had a standing order at the restaurant near her office where they had lunch every other Thursday. He was, by every visible measure, her partner. She had simply, apparently, never asked what he told other people about that. The dinner had been his idea. Bram had a new client, a real estate development group out of Raleigh, and he wanted to take the principals out for dinner. He had mentioned it casually. "Come with me, Cord. Make it feel warmer. You're good at that." She had said yes. Of course she had said yes. She was good at that. The restaurant was called Alara. It was the kind of place that takes reservations 3 weeks in advance. Cordelia had worn the black dress and gotten her hair done, and arrived 11 minutes early because she was always 11 minutes early. Bram was already there, standing near the bar, with a woman. The woman was perhaps 45. She had the bearing of someone who had once been very beautiful and had grown into the more interesting territory on the other side of it. Sharp cheekbones, silver-streaked hair pulled back without apology, a silk blouse the color of deep water. She was laughing at something when Cordelia walked in. She stopped laughing when Bram's expression shifted. Cordelia crossed the room. She kept her face warm and open. She was very good at keeping her face warm and open. Bram kissed her on the cheek. One side only, the way you kiss an aunt. Not the way he kissed her at home. And he said, "Cordelia, this is Nadia. Nadia Forsyth." and then a half-beat of silence that lasted approximately 1 geological era. "This is my friend Cordelia." Nadia Forsyth extended her hand. Her grip was firm. Her eyes, and this was the part Cordelia turned over and over in the weeks that followed, her eyes were not triumphant. They were not smug or competitive or cold. They were careful. They were the eyes of a woman taking a very precise measurement. Cordelia shook the hand and smiled and said, "Lovely to meet you," and spent the next 2 hours being the best version of herself she had ever been in her life. She asked Nadia about her work. She laughed at Bram's stories. She ordered the sea bass and ate half of it and did not taste a single bite. When dinner ended, she hugged Bram in the parking lot and said she was tired and drove home. She sat in her car in her own driveway for 45 minutes. Then she went inside, poured herself 2 fingers of bourbon, and opened her laptop. Here is what you need to understand about Cordelia Vance before we go any further. She was a compliance officer. She spent her entire professional life looking for things that did not add up, irregularities, discrepancies, patterns that looked fine from a distance, but revealed something very different up close. She had caught 3 embezzlement cases in 8 years. She was not the kind of woman who panicked. She was the kind of woman who built a picture, one fact at a time, until the picture told her what it was. That night, she started with Nadia Forsyth. Nadia was easy to find. She was a principal at a Raleigh real estate development company, her name right there on the company website. So she was a real client. That part was true. Then Cordelia kept pulling. She found a business conference in Durham from 7 months ago, where both Bram's name and Nadia's name appeared on the same panel. 7 months ago, Bram had told Cordelia he was in Asheville for a golf weekend with college friends. She checked the hotel charges on their shared account. Asheville, yes, but not a golf resort. A boutique inn in downtown Asheville. Dinner for 2 at a restaurant expensive enough to be memorable. A wine shop purchase of $340. She checked the golf resort anyway. His name was not on any reservation. She opened a new spreadsheet and started entering data. By 2 in the morning, she had 9 months of documentation. 6 hotel stays across 4 cities. Dozens of restaurant charges that didn't line up with the timing or amounts of a business meal. A jewelry purchase from a boutique in Raleigh she had never once seen a piece from. She sat and looked at that spreadsheet for a long time. And then she did something that would have surprised anyone who didn't know her. She didn't call him. She didn't confront him. She closed the laptop and went to bed. Because she understood something that most people do not. You don't move until the picture is complete. Moving early is how you lose. Waiting and building, that is how you win. She had barely scratched the surface of what the picture actually was. She had enough right there to blow his entire life apart. But she chose not to. She chose to wait. And what she found when she kept looking was something far bigger than an affair, something that would end his career, cost him his reputation, and follow his name for the rest of his professional life. 12 days after the dinner at Alara, Cordelia's phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. Charlotte area code. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Is this Cordelia Vance?" The voice was measured. Controlled in the way that voices are controlled when the person behind them is holding something together with both hands. "It is," Cordelia said. A pause. "My name is Nadia Forsyth. I think we need to talk." They met at a coffee shop in Noda, neutral ground, deliberately chosen, the kind of place where 2 women having an intense conversation would not be remarkable. Nadia arrived first. Cordelia had expected that. They ordered coffee. They did not bother with small talk. Nadia spoke first. "I'm going to be direct with you because I think you deserve that and because I've spent 12 days deciding whether to make this call, and I've run out of reasons not to." Cordelia waited. "I met Bram at a conference in Durham last year," Nadia said. "He told me he was single. That he'd been single for 2 years since a difficult breakup. He told me he was free. I believed we were in an exclusive relationship. He's been in Charlotte every week for the past 6 months, telling me it was for business. He has a key to my apartment in Raleigh." Cordelia felt the information arrive like a stone dropping into still water. Concentric rings. Everything expanding outward. "He told you he was single," Cordelia said. He told me he was single, Nadia said. When I saw your face at that dinner, when he said friend, I knew immediately. I've been in that position before. I recognized it.
She paused. I'm sorry.
Cordelia looked at her coffee.
How long?
14 months. 6 years on one side. 14 months on the other. And a man who had been moving between 2 women, 2 cities, and 2 carefully constructed stories for over a year. He has a key to my house too, Cordelia said. They sat with that for a moment. Then Cordelia looked up. There's something I need to show you, she said. Something I found when I started looking. It's not just about us. She opened her laptop. What Cordelia was about to show Nadia was the part that changed everything. Because Bram Whitfield hadn't just been lying to both of them about who he was. He had been using one of them financially. And the moment Nadia understood that, the meeting stopped being 2 wounded women comparing notes. It became something else entirely. Let me explain this simply because it matters. Bram Whitfield was a financial advisor. His job was to manage his clients' money and act in their best interest. What Cordelia had found, buried in the patterns she'd pulled from the household accounts and the professional records she had access to, was that Bram had been steering certain clients towards specific investment products. Not because those products were the best choice for the client, but because those products paid Bram a very large referral fee when someone signed up. The fees were mentioned, buried in paperwork, in language that was technically there but practically invisible to most people. The kind of disclosure you sign without reading, the way most of us sign without reading because we trust the person across the table. His clients trusted him. They were successful people, business owners, professionals, who were good at their work and assumed Bram was good at his.
He had been good at something, just not at protecting them.
When Cordelia walked Nadia through the numbers, Nadia went very still. He recommended a fund to me, Nadia said. 8 months ago.
I put $280,000 in.
Cordelia looked at her. I thought it was because he cared about my financial future, Nadia said. And then quietly, I thought a lot of things.
They sat with that.
Do you know anyone at the State Security's office? Cordelia asked. Or the Attorney General? Nadia looked up. My college roommate works in the Attorney General's office. And that was the moment the plan stopped being a feeling and became a structure. What they built over the next 93 days was not revenge in the screaming, dramatic sense of the word. It was more like architecture. They met twice a week, sometimes in Noda, sometimes at Cordelia's house when Bram was traveling, sometimes in Raleigh at Nadia's kitchen table. They developed a shorthand. They learned each other's rhythms. Nadia brought the emotion. She was by turns furious, devastated, and darkly funny in a way that made Cordelia grateful for her company. Cordelia brought the discipline.
Not yet.
Build more. Be certain. They balanced each other in a way that neither had expected. Nadia had a careful conversation with her college roommate, framed hypothetically as a question about process. If something like this were happening, what would the evidence threshold look like? What would the right steps be? Her roommate listened carefully and asked several follow-up questions. She was, it turned out, very interested in the hypothetical. Cordelia, meanwhile, kept being Bram's partner. She made dinner. She attended his work events. She asked about his week with the same warm attention she had always given him. She was extraordinary at it. She had been practicing for 6 years. Every time she felt the nausea rise in her chest, she opened the spreadsheet and added another row. During those 93 days, she made 3 moves that Bram never noticed. She quietly transferred her personal savings, a decade's worth of money that had never once touched their joint account, to a new account he had no knowledge of. She had the locks on her house rekeyed and filed the change as a routine security update. And she called her attorney, not about a breakup, but about clarity. What do I own? What is documented? What does this look like? The attorney told her she had never had a client this prepared. Cordelia told her, I work in compliance. On day 87, Nadia's contact at the Attorney General's office called back. The tone had changed. This was no longer a friendly hypothetical. This was a professional with a question. The person we discussed, she said. Does he have other clients we could speak with? Nadia looked across the table at Cordelia. Yes, Nadia said. Quite a few. For 87 days, Bram Whitfield had been coming home to dinners Cordelia cooked, sitting across from her at that table, telling her about his day, completely unaware that the two women he had lied to were meeting twice a week and had already been in contact with the Attorney General's office. He thought he was safe. He was not even close to safe. Bram noticed something was wrong on a Wednesday in November. He noticed it the way you notice when the temperature drops 2 degrees, not a conscious thought, just a shift in the atmosphere. He couldn't name it. He felt it. He told himself it was work stress. The second crack came a week later, when a longtime client called and said, with the careful politeness of a man who has rehearsed the sentence, "Bram, I've decided to move my portfolio to a different advisor. I hope you understand." No reason given. No opening to argue. 2 days after that, a different client. Same tone. Same careful finality. Bram sat at his desk and tried to understand what was happening. He called both clients back. One did not answer. The other said, vaguely, that he'd heard some things that made him want to reassess.
Things.
What things? He made calls. He tested his network with casual conversations designed to take the temperature of things. He found nothing concrete. Just a chill. Just the specific feeling of standing in a room where everyone has been talking about you and stopped when you walked in. He came home that Wednesday night and Cordelia made pasta and poured wine and asked him how his day was. He looked at her across the dinner table and felt, irrationally, that she was the only solid thing in his world. "You okay?"
She asked. "Just work stuff," he said. "Tell me," she said. And he did.
He talked for 20 minutes about the clients, the strange coolness, the anxiety he couldn't locate. She listened with every bit of the warm, focused attention she had always given him. When he finished, she said, "I'm sure it'll pass. These things usually do." She poured him more wine. She did not tell him that she knew exactly why his network had gone quiet. She did not tell him that 3 of his clients had already been contacted as part of a preliminary inquiry. She did not tell him that the threads he could feel pulling loose were attached to a structure she and Nadia had been building, carefully and without a single error, for 3 months. She just poured the wine and watched him feel the ground shifting without being able to see what was beneath it. On day 91, Cordelia placed a manila envelope on the kitchen table. Bram came downstairs on a Saturday morning to find her already dressed, not casually but in the way she dressed for work, composed, deliberate, complete. The envelope was sitting directly in front of the chair, where he always sat. He looked at it. He looked at her. "What is this?"
he said.
"Sit down, Bram." He sat. He opened the envelope. Inside were 2 documents. The first was a printed summary, clean, formatted, organized exactly as she would have prepared a compliance report at work, of everything she had documented. The hotel stays, the restaurant charges, the timeline, the jewelry purchase, the name Nadia Forsyth appearing 14 months in. Every line dated, every amount recorded. He went very pale very quickly. He opened his mouth.
"Don't," she said quietly.
"There is a second document." The second document was a letter on attorney letterhead. It outlined, clearly and without emotion, her ownership stake in the house, purchased 3 years before she had ever met him, titled solely in her name. Her savings, her retirement accounts, the joint household account, which she had already closed. The remaining balance moved to an account his name was not on. The letter made clear that she was not asking him for a single thing. She owned everything she needed to own already. She had been a compliance officer for 20 years. She had never commingled anything. He had nothing to take from her. He had no leverage, no claim, no opening.
"The key," she said.
He stared at her. "I need the house key, Bram." He reached into his pocket. His hand was not entirely steady. He set the key on the table. "There's one more thing," she said. She slid a 3rd page across. A printout of a news article. 3 paragraphs. From the Raleigh News and Observer Business section, published 4 days prior. State Securities Division opens inquiry into Charlotte Financial Advisor. His name was not in the article. Not yet. She watched him read it. She watched his face understand exactly what it meant. "You should call your attorney," she said. "Today." "Not Monday."
"Today."
She picked up her coffee cup, her purse, and her car keys. "I have brunch with a friend," she said. She had been planning this moment for 93 days. He had no idea that the friend she was meeting for brunch was Nadia Forsyth, or that Nadia had her own envelope waiting, or that by the end of that weekend, Bram Whitfield's name would be known to people who had the authority to end everything he had built. Nadia Forsyth met Cordelia at a place called the Morning Bell in Noda, the same neighborhood where they had first sat down together 3 months earlier, and they ordered eggs and mimosas and took a booth in the back. Nadia's envelope had been delivered the previous morning, not to Bram directly, to his office, by a courier from the same attorney who had handled Cordelia's paperwork. It contained a formal demand for the return of the referral commission Bram had earned on her $280,000 investment, along with a detailed accounting of the claims he had made to her that contradicted what his firm's own disclosure documents actually said. She had also, the day before, moved past the hypothetical with her contact at the Attorney General's office. Bram had called Nadia 4 times since the envelope arrived. She had not answered any of them. She had forwarded every call notification to her attorney. "How do you feel?" Cordelia asked. Nadia considered the question the way she gave everything her full consideration. "Like the floor held," she said finally. Cordelia understood that completely. They ate eggs. They ordered more coffee. They talked about other things, Nadia's business, a trip to Portugal that Cordelia had been thinking about, a book Nadia was reading that she thought Cordelia might like. They talked the way women talk when they have been through something together and come out the other side. This is the part that Cordelia heard about from other people.
She was not there for it.
She did not need to be. It was a Thursday morning in February, 3 weeks after the envelope. Bram's firm, a mid-sized wealth management company that had been watching the situation develop with quiet alarm, called him in for a meeting at 9 a.m. He walked through the lobby of his own office building the way he had walked through it for 11 years. He nodded to the receptionist. He took the elevator to the 4th floor. He walked past the open-plan desks where the junior advisor sat. Several of them looked up. That was the first sign, though he didn't register it until later. The meeting lasted 40 minutes. When it ended, Bram walked back out to the open floor and the head of the compliance department, a woman named Tressa, who had been with the firm longer than he had, was standing at her office door. She did not look at him the way she usually looked at him. He was escorted to his desk by the head of HR. He was asked to remove his personal items. He was walked to the elevator. The junior advisors watched. Some of them turned back to their screens. 1 or 2 did not. His name appeared in the formal administrative leave announcement that went out to the firm's client list that afternoon via email. Cordelia saw it because she was on that list. They shared several professional contacts in Charlotte's financial community. The email was careful and corporate, the language chosen by attorneys. But there was no misreading it. Bram Whitfield had been placed on administrative leave pending an external review. In Charlotte's professional circle, administrative leave pending external review meant one thing. Everybody knew what it meant. His phone began ringing that afternoon with the calls of people he had built his reputation around. Some called to ask what had happened. Some did not call at all, which told its own story. One former colleague, a man Bram had worked alongside for a decade, sent a 2-line message that said he was sorry to hear the news and that he hoped everything worked out. He did not say he believed in Bram's innocence. He did not say he would be in touch. Cordelia received a message that same evening from their mutual acquaintance, the same one who had earlier mentioned Bram's attorney, with that particular awkwardness. This time the message just said, "Saw the news. Hope you're doing okay." She wrote back, "I'm doing well, actually. Thank you for thinking of me." She set her phone down and poured herself a glass of wine and sat in the living room of her house, purchased 3 years before she had ever met him, titled solely in her name, and she looked at the trees outside the window, bare in February, and she felt something settle in her chest that she hadn't realized had been unsettled. Not triumph. Something quieter than that. Something that felt like accurate accounting. The Securities Division investigation became formal within 6 weeks of that Saturday morning in Cordelia's kitchen. By February, 4 additional clients had been identified as potentially affected. By March, 2 had joined a civil action. The firm severed its relationship with Bram entirely, They moved quickly, which told Cordelia everything about how long they had been holding their breath about him. Bram hired a good attorney. He had the money to hire a good attorney for now. Whether he would still have that money after the civil action concluded was a different question. He sent Cordelia one email in January. 2 paragraphs that tried to be both an apology and an explanation and succeeded at neither. She read it once, forwarded it to her attorney in case it became relevant to anything, and deleted it. He did not send another. Nadia recovered her investment through the civil settlement. It took 8 months, but it came back in full, with interest. She put a portion of it into renovating a commercial space in Raleigh that her development company had acquired. A mixed-use building, residential floors above, retail below, the kind of solid brick and glass project that gets written up in local business journals as an example of thoughtful urban development. When the renovation was finished, she sent Cordelia a photo from her phone. Just the image. No message. Cordelia looked at the atrium. High ceilings, clean lines, light coming through tall windows, and texted back, "It's beautiful." Nadia wrote, "We build it solid." Cordelia had not started dating again. Not that winter, not that spring. Her sister Phyllis kept offering names, and Cordelia kept declining with the patient smile of a woman who knows what she wants and is in no hurry. What she had was her house and her trees and a career she was very good at and a friendship forged in the most unexpected way she could have imagined, with a woman in Raleigh who understood, without it needing to be spoken, exactly what the past year had contained. She had Portugal on the calendar for June. She was going alone. That had seemed like a sad detail when she first booked it, and by the time it arrived it seemed like exactly the right thing. 3 weeks. No schedule she didn't set herself. No one to accommodate. She had her work and her standards and the particular satisfaction of a woman who looked at something clearly, thought about it carefully, and acted without a single wasted move. She had the knowledge that when someone had tried to reduce her to a footnote, had stood in a restaurant and said, "This is my friend," as though 6 years were nothing, as though she were nothing, she had not fallen apart. She had opened her laptop and gotten to work, and that had made all the difference. Some people hear this story and say Cordelia was cold, that a woman who truly loved someone would have screamed, cried, confronted him in that parking lot, made him feel the full weight of what he had done in real time. But I think most of you watching this understand something that those people don't. There is a kind of strength that gets mistaken for coldness. It is the strength of a woman who has spent a lifetime doing things correctly and knows the difference between an emotional reaction and an effective one. It is the strength of someone who looked at a man who had been lying to her face for over a year and thought, not how do I hurt him right now, but how do I make sure this is permanent? Bram Whitfield called Cordelia his friend to her face, in a restaurant, in front of another woman, and walked to his car that night thinking he had gotten away with something. What he had actually done was put 2 careful, intelligent women in the same room on the same night. And those 2 women, it turned out, had more in common than he had ever imagined, including the patience to build something that would outlast his excuses. He lost the relationship. He lost the career. He lost the reputation he had spent 11 years constructing. And he lost it to a spreadsheet and a coffee shop conversation and 93 days of 2 women who refused to be rushed. There is no more dangerous thing in the world than underestimating a woman who documents everything. This has been your story for today. If this one stayed with you, and I believe it did, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment and tell me which moment hit you hardest.
Was it the dinner?
The coffee shop? The envelope on the table? Or the walk across that lobby in February, past the people who used to look at him differently? If you are new here, subscribe. We tell stories like this every week. Stories about the people who don't just survive, they make sure the record is accurate. We will see you in the next one.